What is going on, gentlemen? Welcome to this week's episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. In today's episode, we speak with Master Coach Rick William, and he is an incredible human. We dive deep into his framework and fundamentals for how he helps people unlock their potential. So if you're looking to dial in and be a better version of yourself, this is definitely the conversation to listen to. Rick has been featured in everything from Entrepreneur to Men's Fitness to Forbes magazine and many, many more. So be sure to dive into the entire episode. And as always, if you are looking to have an immersive experience and unlock your own potential, be sure to check out the Unbreakable Man program. It is a 3-day immersive experience that will challenge you mentally, physically, and emotionally. It is designed to be the thing to get you out of your comfort zone, get you out of your head where you've been struggling and you've been blocked, and really crack you open to unlock your potential, tap into your power, and unleash your purpose. So if you are interested in that program, check it out in the description below. And as always, enjoy this week's episode. What is up, beautiful humans? This is Dr. Dave Cahotis. I am on a mission to forge strong, heart-centered, and purpose-driven men. And this podcast is here to help you stop managing your problems and start breaking free of stress, limiting beliefs, and excuses that stop you from executing at your fullest potential, living with passion, and being the man you want to be. So let's go. All right, brother, welcome to the show, man. It's such an honor to be with you today, all the way down in
Likewise,
Costa Rica.
brother. I know. Thank you for having me, brother. Thank you for having me.
So I heard about you and we were chatting about it before we started, from Steven Jaggers. I received my training. He's like my Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, he's a Jedi.
He's a Jedi for sure. If I'm Luke Skywalker, I cannot claim, the moniker Luke Skywalker, but Jaggers he's the man. So
yeah, he's great.
He's an incredible soul. So I was reading through your bio that you're doing a lot of somatic work, a lot of nervous system regulation, all these things. Talk to me about how you got into it and kind of how you walk people through regulating the nervous system.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. So I've trained as a breathwork facilitator as well, not with Jaggers, with another company. And I've been interested in transformation and healing for like a decade, like since I was like 20, 21, I started getting into like Tony Robbins and just general personal development. And as you go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, I started to see that there was an underlying pattern, whether it be from plant medicine work, transformational work, and then learning about trauma and just all of these different things I could start to see coming together. Yeah. And for me, the work on the nervous system was essentially like it was like one of the foundational pieces. Yeah. In that everything that we want to do in life, our nervous system is responding to based on experience. So like old personal development would be typically, or old therapy like CBT would be trying to change at the level of the mind, when actually there's so much happening in the body, the unconscious, it would be another way of saying that is like effectively running the show, and the brain is really just getting signal from that. Yep. So if we can get the body on board with anything, as I'm sure you know, then doing the thing, having the relationship, living a life of meaning and purpose, overcoming the fears, overcoming the obstacles, so you can step into a greater life, really starts with getting the body on board. Otherwise, we just hit a wall, and I was hitting those walls. And it wasn't until I learned how to like regulate my nervous system, release, trauma and pain from my body, and build resiliency so that I could actually step into the things that I wanted to step into in my life and know that I had the nervous system strength and flexibility to do so. Like that just opened up a whole portal for me that I didn't know was that. And as soon as that happened for me, I'm like, I got to share this stuff with other people.
I love that. And there's actually a couple of things that I want to unpack. Number one was, that moment, because I think everybody in life that has gone into the healing practices and coaching and these things, we've all kind of had that moment in life where we like like we're kind of looking around, like what is actually happening in my life. And then we realize like I am lost. I have a similar bio to you. I was reading your bio and I love it because it kind of goes through a lot of the same story, especially for me as a man, coming from childhood. It is a middle class family. There was nothing wrong, but there was still a lot of wounds, that we pick up from our mother and our father, these mother and father wounds. And then we go off in life and we say, I'm going to go create this world and get out of my way, and then we go have fun, we party a little bit too much, maybe we get into a certain addictions in life, and then we build something and then we realize, wait, I'm completely unfulfilled. Like I'm doing this for somebody else to try to like cover up all the wounds that I'm not really seeing, and finally get to that place of like, okay, now we got to get there. So I love stories like this. And that's actually why I call even my company the Unbreakable Self, and this is the Unbreakable Podcast. Walk me through in your genesis, kind of like when those moments kind of happened for you, and then yeah, what came out of that?
No, that's a great question. And I love your quote that you posted on Instagram recently, which was fulfillment happens when you overcome an obstacle, I'm paraphrasing, and then teach others how to do the same.
Yeah, you overcome your suffering. Yeah.
You overcome your suffering. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's where we can jump in from. So I was much like you, very confident, went out in the world, kind of thing, I'm going to create this thing, and then really kind of made this business, which was in the material world. It was doing very well. Like where I'm from, I was like considered for my age to be quite successful.
Yeah.
And I like climbed that ladder and had like social status and all of these things that we want, especially when we're younger, we kind of value these things higher. And I'd got those things and I just felt deeply unfulfilled. I was like, did I even really want this? Like, why? Like, I had to ask a lot of questions. And I was working like 60, 70 hours a week. I had like a team of like, between 7 and 10 in my office in the city. And I was just like, this cannot be it. And that just sent me on deep self-inquiry, journaling, meditation, plant medicine, mentors, spiritual teachers. And yeah, I just had to like figure it out. I was just like, this does not work. I do not want to do this anymore. I'm just going to like find a way to figure this shit out, and just like, just put all my attention on figuring out until I did. And that led me down so many different rabbit holes, some good, some challenging, but like eventually from like working through all of those, I'm sure you know it, like things turned out pretty sweet. Like I'm 33 now, 34 next month. And I'm just like so glad I went through that journey. And the beauty is, like, I'm sure similar with your work, is that now I get to support other men and some women on that journey who are in that process too. So they don't have to take quite as many years to get through that journey. You've got to go through it. There's no avoiding it. It's not like you got to skip some steps, but when you've got someone who's walked through it and made some trial and errors, then you don't have to make quite as many mistakes yourself. And even just having a support through that, I was like, I wish I had someone through that, because there was some times where I'm just like, man, like this is hard.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in fact, that's actually why I created a men's group. When I was kind of halfway through, I had gone through the dark night, still trying to do it myself. Like, I'm going to do this myself, just struggling the whole way. And then finally put together a group of men around me to hold me accountable. And we started in an egoic sense. We started to kind of try to create, some type of thing like, oh, we're going to be like these superior men and all these things. And then that led into plant medicine, and that led into a whole, ball of wax, which now has created who I am today. And so this is actually more of a curiosity and more of like your philosophy. And I've seen this with myself, and I see that obviously you work through this experience, which is the sort of the great unraveling. And we kind of get to this point in life where we recognize we're unfulfilled. We don't have the meaning and purpose we want. Do you feel that is a natural process of human evolution? Again, this is more of a philosophical question. Do you feel that is true for everybody? Like, it's almost like a maturation of human consciousness to go from adolescent into adulthood, almost like a blossoming from a caterpillar into a butterfly? Or do you think it's just like a select group of individuals that are sort of out there like looking for more? Because I'm more curious in this is my sense of curiosity of like, because I look over in the landscape and I'm like, there's a lot of people just sort of going through the motions, and like I want to reach out to them and I want to help them. But is it that those, when I say those people, I mean, you know, obviously we've all been there, but like, are they really looking for that? Or is that, you know, I'm sort of like in my own state of vulnerable questioning right now in a way.
No. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
It's really interesting. So just as you're sharing it, I have thought about this, but I'm just like thinking, I'm just going to think out loud with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, well, the first thing I started thinking of was like thinking of some of like the older tribes that I've had contact with. And the same pattern doesn't seem to exist, say, in some of the Latin American tribes that still exist that have, you know, lineage passed down from teacher to student to father to son.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to have the same intensity as like the meaning crisis or intensity of that which we seem to be experiencing it in the West.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily, like, maybe it is an evolution of consciousness, because we do see these archetypes played out in movies, you know, like I think the story of King Arthur, which I heard recently, I think it was on a Rogan podcast with, I think he was with Peterson. He was talking about the Guy Ritchie episode, where they were talking about the two archetypes of the son, the prodigal son.
Yep.
You know, they both leave home. There's the good, some kind of analytical son who stays at home and is really good to his father. There's the other son who goes out and he adventures in the world, and you know, he goes out and he parties and he spends all his money, and eventually he comes home and his father's like celebrates his return, and the other son is like, why did you do that? Like, why are you celebrating his return? I've been with you here the whole time.
Yeah.
And then basically the analytical son can't ever understand that, or the analytical part of us, which is the point of the story, can't ever understand that we need to venture out into the unknown to kind of fall down and make mistakes in order to actually come back and be an integrated man or an integrated human being. And it's through that process of failing that we actually come back and become something more whole. But the analytical mind can never really rationalize it, which is the point of the story, which I feel is a little fitting for the conversation. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. You know, this is an open conversation.
And I've experienced it. And actually, that's really kind of funny. I watched the movie King Arthur on Netflix about a month ago, which is really good. And I forget the actor's name, but it was really well done. And for that, instead of like the prodigal son sort of motif or hero's journey, it was more of the Shadow King and, you know, King Arthur coming online into his power. And as soon as he touched Excalibur, he burst into, you know, it's like almost like he's like could hold his power, and he like threw it down and he denied it, you know, all the classic hero's journey archetypes. And to kind of work us back into that experience of, I always like doing this sometimes, especially on a podcast, because it's almost like a self-exploration of, you know, is it necessary that we all go through this maturation process psychologically? In my mind, is a yes. Like I genuinely believe that we all have to go from this, essentially this boy psychology, right? This adolescent psychology, and maturate, right? We need to go through this maturation process into, you know, kingship. That's the classic archetype, right? We use that archetype a lot, King David, and, you know, all the different archetypes of the king. And I feel that we are all going through that. In fact, I actually think there's a quickening, especially in modern society, that we're sort of like this hero's journey in tribal society, right? Was part of, it's like almost like part of the culture, right? You go through an initiatory rite. You go through, like, the father brings the son into the collective, and he's held by men in the tribe. And there's a, you know, an initiatory process. It could be firewalking, could be dancing, could be a number of processes. Ultimately, it's going to be very physically sacrificial. So you're going to give of yourself. Sometimes there's a plant medicine. Sometimes there's something that's going to just be very challenging, right? And I've gone through
fire ants. I think fire ants in the Brazilian tribe.
That one hurts. That one hurts.
Hundreds of fire ants that are meant to be like bullet stings. But,
that would hurt. And I was just thinking about like basic training. Like I would actually rather go through 3-4 months of basic training again rather than take fire ants for a day. I mean, that's, you know, it could be, who knows? It could be handled. But kind of the point being is, I really think that there's this natural quickening that's happening because of modern society, modernity, right? Well, it's like things are happening faster and faster and faster, and we don't have this tribal sort of like cultivation. It's not part of the culture in the West currently, and it might have been in the past. And I think it is sort of like false initiatory right through maybe fraternities. I don't know if you've kind of seen like, American college systems, fraternities have this. It's almost like they'll haze you, like they'll use the word haze. They'll make you drink beer until you vomit. They'll do whatever. The military has this, but these are all sort of false initiatory processes because it doesn't truly bring you into your divine right, your divine purpose. What is your reason for being? Who are you, right? Ultimately at the very core of your sense of your essence, right? Like, what is that thing that like illuminates through you that gives you life force? And so I'm answering my own question even as I'm speaking, which is, yes, everybody must go through this. And in fact, I think we are all kind of coming to this like kind of almost like a shaking point, especially over the last couple of years where we went through COVID, and a lot of people are like, what am I doing with myself? Like, what is this? And I was actually listening to another podcast, and they were talking about it's between 50 and 70% of all adults in America, and that could be considered the West, right? It could be across Australia and other, other Western cultures, that they are unfulfilled. They are just unfulfilled, and they feel like they don't have purpose and meaning. And, that kind of leads me, into another question, but which I'll ask here in a second. But I do believe that we are kind of all as a culture kind of going to this point of like, I've been working my ass off for the man, like, and what for? What am I doing? So I really think we are maturing as a culture and a society. And I think, your story and my story very similar in that we sort of like went early in a way, and now we're like looking back like, hey, we got you guys. Like, come on this way, which is part of it. So which leads me in my next question, which is, that said, like, let's say somebody comes to you and they're like, I am lost. I don't know who I am. I don't know where to go. Like, I got this house, I got these kids, I got, this money, this job, I've created everything I want. I feel trapped. I feel sort of despondent in a way. What would you say, or how do you work that individual through sort of like a starting, foundational process?
That's a great question. And I get that a lot. Like, that's a lot of men show up for me. They're normally entrepreneurs, or they've normally been high level executives. They've created some type of success and they've reached that, which is beautiful. It's amazing to have that. Also, that's a maturation in itself. So it's not to discredit this. Like, I think it's amazing that people go out into the world and to create something. That's like a level of identity. It's like I put my will into something and I go and do it and I achieved it. And now there's another level. So like new level, new devil. And in that, you're like unwinding it. It's like, oh, like maybe this wasn't actually what I wanted. Now I actually think about it because I've arrived here and it's not that fulfilling.
Yeah.
So people start realizing maybe it was mom and dad who put influence on it, or society. And that's where I think this piece that you're sharing comes in. This is the individuation process, a piece of it, and the maturation simultaneously.
Yeah.
So that's normally where I meet a lot of men. And where I really begin with people before diving into the emotional world is I start with regulation, circling back to where our whole conversation began.
Yeah.
Because before you dive into your own shadows and your own depth, because that's where we've got to go. So like masculinity, I don't want to go into too much of masculine, feminine energy dynamics, but they are important in terms of understanding constructs of reality and polarity. They are useful, I believe. But in essence, masculinity, or the masculine, is height, it's solar energy, and it's upward moving. It's hierarchical, it's upward moving. And the feminine is also the depth. So height without depth will fall, and typically fall hard. Equally, depth without height will never rise like the phoenix. So we got to have this balance of our energies so that we can so our descents don't become as hard. Because really what we went through, and I'm guessing, is we went through like a high rise, but we didn't have the depth to maintain it because it wasn't simultaneously cultivated. And then it creates a hard crash. And we call that a midlife crisis. We call that a whatever we want to call it, this maturation process, because the depth hadn't been built.
Mm.
And then a lot of men, we go on this kind of deep dive and we have to uncover what's actually going on for us. But in my journey in that, whether it be with shadow work or plant medicine, doing that without learning how to regulate my nervous system would sometimes get me into places which were really challenging to get out of, because I would be putting my nervous system into a state of dysregulation and I didn't know how to get it back into connection. So before I even go into the depths with people, I'm like, okay, let's start learning how to regulate our nervous system to like the basic triggers that are in your life right now, so we can activate, which is kind of the masculine, go up into the sympathetic nervous system, come back into connection.
Yeah.
You know? And then learn how to do the opposite, go into shutdown. Like, what's making you feel sad? You know, what's kind of shutting you down from life? Why are you not stepping up and stepping in, and learn just to go into the depths a little bit without getting into like the story or where that necessarily comes from in the body, just going in a little bit and then coming back into connection, just giving them the basics of regulation. Then from there, that's when we start diving in to, you know, uncovering and unpacking what's going on internally to build that deeper connection to self and to the heart. And then the purpose kind of begins to manifest itself. And there are certain techniques that I use, like, you know, there's a regression technique that I use, which is really beautiful. And I take someone back through their whole life and I find their most positive memories and their most negative memories. And then we assimilate all of the feelings that are associated with the most positive and the most negative. And they're normally the opposite of each other, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And then we begin to cultivate a life based on how you want to feel, because purpose really is an emotional state, as you know.
Yeah.
Which then stimulates behavior, which is like, it's like when you're really driven from something, from the heart, whether it be a passion or a love, like we're pulled by it. Like that's the pull of love. And the life force just naturally flows through us. And that's like the masculine part of us essentially serving the feminine part of us. You know, it's like it's in service of something greater than self. And that's a really beautiful process, but it's an unwinding. There are many different tools that I use, and but really regulation, nervous system work is the foundation. Then we dive into like the depths of what is actually going on and uncover that, look at values, look at traumas and pains that are holding us back from stepping into greater light and greater height, that's solar energy. And then it's really just an integration process of that, and, you know, helping just being a support, like I'm sure you are with the brothers and men that you're holding. And life just naturally unfolds itself. When I think when we embark on this journey, we meet the right mentors, we meet the right teachers and friends. And I think life itself, God, spirit, whatever your belief system is, I think actually just begins to help us as we embark on that journey.
Yeah. And that's really funny that you kind of go through that practice. I have literally the exact same practice, which is like, you know, regression practice of going back to those moments. Because I received that from a coach to go back, and maybe it's just like, we're all kind of doing this. We're all learning from the same coaches, who knows? But it was such a powerful practice because it really brought me back into the essence of what I'm trying to create. And those moments in life where these original moments of like, oh, when I was just doing this thing, I felt the most free. I felt the most joy. And it just kept, you know, over the course of a few days, you kind of just like write out these moments. And then all of a sudden it's sort of like, it all came to the surface of like, oh yeah, joy is very like high, number one on the list, freedom, number two. And they are actually kind of like intermixed. It's like, oh yeah, both joy and freedom are very, very valuable to me, or vital, I should say, to my essence. And so if I think about what I'm serving, quote unquote, right, you know, it's like, what am I really giving? It is the essence of freedom through the work and the joy that comes from that. And now it's like, oh, okay, so I'm just going to live this life of true sovereignty, true freedom. And I've been able to go even deeper into that, you know, for myself, of like, if I feel trapped by something, okay, like I feel unfree, let's go into that. And so I'm able to tune in and do that, do what you just described, which is nervous system regulation. I've been in physical, you know, practice of like body work, right? So my background was, I was a chiropractor, and we were all about nervous system integration, regulation, kind of from top down, from inside out. And I would see patients with the same issues coming back, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, and then I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and then it was like a whole world just cracked open, and I said, what is it? Like, inside out, upside down, let's go. Like, So then I got into mind body practices, into energy work, into somatic releasing. And that's been, incredibly potent over the
Oh,
last few
wow.
years. Yeah.
That's incredible, brother. I love
Yeah.
the crossovers between our stories. And that book also was such a pivotal book. If anyone's listening and you want to get a grasp of what's going on, I think Bessel's book, The Body Keeps a Score, is absolutely incredible. Challenging read,
It
really.
is.
It's pretty scientific. But if you're interested in this stuff, there's so many gems in that.
Yeah, I do remember. I think there was a couple chapters, and he goes very descriptive into traumas. He doesn't just say the word trauma; he will like paint the picture, and you're like, I just need to sit down for a second, with that.
There's a few times I had to stop reading that book.
Yeah. I've heard that from many people as well, where they like, I just got to put this down. But I think it's important. I think it's okay to like, especially if we're empathetic, to sit with that and be like, okay, well, I feel a lot of sadness here, and kind of work. It's almost like it's like our own work within reading a book, which is really, really, really powerful.
Yeah, Bess is awesome. Literally, one of his quotes I literally share with every single client, and that is, there is no such thing as a bad response, only an adaptive response. So there's no such thing as a bad response, only an adaptive response. And I've actually meditated on that. You can get pretty deep with it because it's like there's healing in those words,
Yeah,
like,
unpack that for me, because there's so much goodness there. I want to then an adaptive response.
Well, I think for me, when those words kind of hit me, it reminds my body that like everything that happened, that I went through, and also that I like acted out, was just an adaptive response. Like I was just acting out. I'm not a bad person. I'm not wrong or broken or any of these things, which actually just perpetuate this kind of like behavior. And like there's a place for the victim, and I let my victim come out sometimes. It's necessary and healing. But I like do my best to consciously own it wherever I can. Like that's my like pledge to myself, is when my victim's speaking, and I have this with my partner, I'm like, my victim needs to say something right now. Or I try and like own it in the moment so that the victim doesn't move from the passenger seat into the driver's seat and start just riding the show, because that's the whole thing. And it just reminds me that like, holy shit, we're just like these crazy human creatures that come into the world, that all sorts of crazy shit happen to pretty much every one of us.
Yeah.
Which we're affected by. And then we blame ourselves for it. And then that blame creates all these other behaviors that we feel bad about, which only perpetuate more behaviors that we feel bad about, until eventually we're just like, like I got to just forgive myself for this and, move on and, work to be a better man, and just realize that I've just been doing my best, and everyone's doing the same. And it's just, there's so much in that.
There's so much.
No,
and that was beautiful. And in fact, I was kind of scoping out your stuff, and you had a video about talking about you got here because of how safe you feel, right? Whether it's in your business, in your relationships, in your money, it's like you are playing out life as safe as you feel that you can play out life. And that quote, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it feels like that is the same kind of like line where you're adapted to a certain guide rail, and that guide rail is based on experience, but also trauma and how deep are we willing to play. So if like on one pole is negative and on the other pole is positive, the sensation, when I say sensation, I mean feeling that, if I want to experience the depth of love or the full essence of love with my partner, but I am so afraid of feeling wounded, well, I'm only going to get so much out of my partner or just the interaction of my partner. And so I'm not willing to feel the depth of heartache or loss or abandonment because of trauma. And again, this is okay, but like sometimes trauma happens for us so that we can go back to those deep moments in life, to reconcile them, to sit with them, like you were describing. You honor your nervous system first, you regulate your nervous system first, and then you go into the depths. And it's almost like one at a time. And with a coach or with a mentor or a guide, or in a safe container, could be in an initiatory process or whatever, you can go a little bit deeper every time. And that opens your guide rails, or you're able to like expand your range. And now all of a sudden, what abandonment feels like. So exactly what it feels like. So you just sort of like, oh, okay, I know what that feels like. I don't have to run from that. You're not afraid of the sensation of abandonment. Now you're able to open yourself up to a whole new experience and expression of love. And that's what I've felt for myself. But, kind of what that quote kind of speaks to me is, you're only playing out your adaptive response. And
Mhm.
we all kind of play in these guide rails. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, for us to expand, we just need to just go a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper.
I love that. I love the idea of the guide rails. And that's really where our life is like you say, it's within these two guide rails. And I think the beauty of the work that we're doing, and I'm sure many of the listeners are doing, is we're expanding these guide rails. We're
Yeah.
like, and if we flip them this way, if you're watching this,
Yeah.
then we move into that, like this would be called, the our window of tolerance. That's really the
Mm,
guide rails, right?
mm,
And then from doing the work where like our partner shows us that we're not like really feeling the depths, like I shared this the other day with a client, and that's like the men in our lives help us. It's like iron sharpens iron. We've heard that as men.
yeah. Yeah.
And I think the feminine helps us sharpen our depths. It helps us sharpen our inner world as much as
Mm,
the masculine helps us sharpen our outer world. And
mm,
I think when we're stepping into a bigger life, we need to have both of those polarities. If you're stepping into a position of leadership in business, in life, as a father, as a brother,
mm,
and you don't have depth, like you're just
mm.
not going to be able to help support other people. You're not going to be a good father or king or brother or leader or whatever we call it,
Yeah.
because you need that depth. You need that connection to have empathy and understanding of like what's happening in this space. What's
Mm,
going on for Dave? What's going on for my partner right now? Like, because I'm holding a container of leadership
mm.
and I need to feel what's going on. And I can't do that if I haven't felt what's going on in myself.
Yeah.
So it's that like feminine helping us dive deeper. And then that actually allows our masculine to rise higher
Mm,
in a
mm.
really healthy way. And I think
Yeah.
when men step up to that challenge of being willing to go into the depths, that hero's journey, into the depths into the feminine, the depths into the unknown, that which we're afraid of,
Mm,
expands our container into feeling the potential loss of love, which maybe we had for our mother or whoever or our past partners. And
yeah.
then in the feeling of that, going into that, we actually create the ability for more height, which is what you were pointing out before, so that
Yeah.
you can be in greater levels of intimacy with your partner, so that you can be in greater levels of connection and leadership with your team or your friends or your brothers, whatever it might be. And I think that's the invitation. I think that is what's birthing itself right here and right now. And I
Mm.
know there's so many men who are stepping into this, and I think it's a really exciting time.
I totally agree 100%. And in fact, I love, when we hold containers, and when I say the word container, I mean like a space, right? Like let's say we're going to do some work, we gather and the container is set, and that creates a depth of safety for, especially for men, to go within themselves and express whatever they need to express. And when we go through that, we can really expand our range. Here's a question actually from that, because I see how that can be played out in a safe space held by a mentor or a coach. But let's say I'm going through life and I'm doing my sales job, and I'm going to and from work, going to play with the kids, but I don't necessarily have, let's say, a group of men, or I don't have a coach yet. Is there a thing that I can do on a daily practice that maybe you prescribe that allows me to kind of dip my toes in the water without going too deep? Because I will raise my hand and say I've gone too deep by myself, like almost like get in the undertow of like, you're in the drudges for like 2 weeks, and this is a couple years ago before I knew exactly what nervous system regulation and even all these things were. I would just get thrown around. So
Same.
yeah, is there anything that you prescribe?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I just think straight off the bat, it would be like, just in the most loving way, you just got to get over that. You just got to get through yourself, over yourself, and have been in that position. And you've just got to find support, really, whether it's
Mm,
online. There are people out there. Like, you've
yeah,
just got to get beyond that barrier and stop trying to do it yourself,
yeah,
because it's that's going to be your biggest limiting factor. So just like get resourceful, like get resourceful and find brothers, make friends, go to breathwork sessions, go to places where these brothers are, get on a flight, stop spending your money on so many beers or just like pointless shit, and actually start, looking after yourself so you can be of greater support to your family and your friends and whoever it is that you're here to help support and serve.
mm,
And intrinsically within that, you're going to find meaning. Like the moment you take that step, you're going to find meaning because you're embarking on the adventure. Yeah. So that would be my first piece. My second piece would be like, if you can't muster the courage or strength to do that for whatever reason, which I don't believe to be true for next to nearly anyone, I would recommend just getting to an online breathwork. There's so many breathwork facilitators who are putting things on. Get to an online breathwork. Or, if you wanted a nervous system regulation exercise, you can go on my website and I have that for free. But still, even though like I have that there, like there is a resource. You can go on my website, rickWilliam.com, and it'll give you a regulation exercise where you go up into sympathetic, come back into connection, drop down into dorsal, shut down, and come back into connection. Like, I'd rather you not go get that thing and just go find some brothers and some people on Instagram or wherever it is that you find your people and go do that, because you'd be better served doing that. And then once you've got some connection of other brothers who are walking the path, then go to the breathwork session, then go do some nervous system regulation, but just find some brothers first.
Yeah.
That would be my like,
yeah. That was the step for me. I was broke. Yeah. Legit. I think I had like at one point negative $900 in my account, and like my bank was calling me like, "Hey, are you gonna deposit some money any day soon?" I was like, yeah, like, which is so funny because like, I got all the degrees and all these things, but like it doesn't make you successful at life. Like I was like, from a monetary perspective, very like a huge failure, but in every other sense of the word, I was like, yeah, life is good. And I was actually going through pictures today, looking back at those times in 2016, 2017, 2018, where I was like really in the dark night. My kids were really small, and like we were, me and my family were kind of just randomly going through memories on, how it pops up on iPhone, Apple TV, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, wow, like I was smiling in a lot of these, but I remember feeling like so scared, so scared. And every, like, we would go to Crested Butte in Colorado, and like my family would, spot us for the flight, and we would get out there, and like I'd be like, what am I doing here? I'm like, I don't deserve any of this. Like it was such a weird time. But that's to your point, which is, it doesn't matter where you are, get together with a group of men, because there are other men, or even if you're a woman, like get together with a group of individuals that understand you, that are going through a similar experience, and create your own support group. And that was the thing that really kind of sucked me out of this victim mentality, this feeling like I got to do it alone. I got to go, I'm broke. What am I going to do? And so,
it can be hard to get out of that, because there's so much shame, especially as a man, of us not having wealth or success. Like that's like a whole thing to say that we actually need help. Like if you like that in itself, I think is a huge pivotal moment on our healing journey or on our maturation process, is actually realizing like we need help. We all do. It doesn't matter what level you're at. We all need help and support. Period.
Yeah. You just got to ask. You just got to ask. Like, that's it. Yeah. That's it. So let's kind of change gears, because I think this is really important, which is the feminine masculine. I know you kind of touched on it just a little bit, but I love, like, that is such a powerful experience, like, especially for men who have never really tapped into their feminine side, their feminine structures. They might have tapped in, and maybe they haven't even tapped into their own masculine structures, who knows? But I was in this masculine. In fact, I got the book behind me, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, like, just like, I was like, yes, I'm a man. And then it wasn't until, I guess, last year, I was doing a meditation, and I just sort of like had this vision of a feminine structure. And I said, oh, that's very interesting. And I sort of surrendered to it. I was like, all right, do whatever you need to do. Like, I'm here. And I was just in a whole nother world, and it shook me. And the entire next, couple months, I was like unpacking a lot of, my own wounded little girl inside of me, and all these, different structures. So, if a guy is going through this stuff, how do you start them maybe on understanding masculinity and femininity, and really like what these are?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And beautiful that you got to encounter the goddess of the feminine in such a way. I can only imagine that experience was beautiful.
It was incredible.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And like, guys, listen to his laugh there. Like you can hear that was a really profound experience. And if you've experienced it, like there's no way of describing it apart from you'll just know.
You'll just know.
That's it. You'll just know. Yeah. It's like when you catch a wave and you're surfing, or you ride down some powder and you're snowboarding or skiing.
Yeah.
And you just like, you can never describe that. It's just something that you feel, and it's profound and you never forget it.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a good place to jump off from is like the encounter of the goddess or the feminine. And for me, that began, I'll have to rewind in time a little bit. I was like very heavily in my masculine structures from probably age 19 to 25. And that came out the back of like having so much lack of discipline in my kind of late teen years.
Mm-hmm.
And
was it conscious masculine, or was it not?
No.
Or you were still unconscious?
Well, it was, I'm always unconscious beyond what I know, but like
True.
there was a conscious choice that I made in that moment, but I wouldn't say it was conscious.
Okay.
So like at age 19 and a half, I was having a lot of issues with like lack of just like discipline in my life and a lot of drug kind of use that wasn't very productive or healthy. And I was just like, fuck this shit. I'm like, I need to join the military or I need to join the gym. So at age 19, I joined the gym and I just like went ham. Like all of my repressed trauma and pain, essentially, I recycled or utilized for like 5 or 6 years until I was like 220 pounds or something like that. So I learned how to use masculine principles. I built a business, and it was just like straight masculine. It was just like, I'm building a business for money, full stop. I'm getting big just because I can, full stop. Like there was just nothing much more to it than that.
Yeah.
And that's why I got to that place when I was 25 and I'm like, like this is like freaking empty. And that is for me, if you like if we're just in our masculine without any integrated feminine, like the less like meaning and joy and spice in life you have. Like to me, the feminine is like innocence. It's like why we would go to war. Like you can go to war and it'd be beautiful if you're going to protect innocence, if you're going to protect love. Like those archetypes are beautiful when they're in service of one another. Mm-hmm. It gets really weird and icky when the masculine's in service of like not that. It's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like it's just like it's just kind of empty and pointless. It's just like what? Like it's just it feels like that moment after like a really horrible just like masturbation session is just like like it's just like spunking life away. Like
that's get to that. Like what am I doing?
Exactly. What the fuck is this?
It's a moment in life where you're just like sort of like flaccid. You're just like fuck. You're just like look in the mirror and like I'm a slob. I don't. What am I doing? What am I doing?
And every man listening has been there.
So good.
So like like that I feel like that kind of like vibe, everyone can kind of feel that. And I think that's kind of like the unhealthy or the unconnected masculine. And I was in that. I was living it. And that's where I had to go into my descent, which was my descent into the feminine. And that was like my encounter with the goddess, where I was like meeting the goddess entity. I was seeing her in nature. I was beginning to appreciate her. I was seeing my own mother wound and my own feminine wound and kind of grieving this process. And just it's being since age 25 and I'm 33 now, like I'm still deepening that understanding and really just beginning to understand that these two energies are really like the foundational constructs of reality. And when these two constructs are in harmony, that's like really healthy. Like it's just really healthy. So like I could use some descriptive words to describe them based on like what I've come to understand. And I actually like charted this out on a board with my partner the other day. And we were just like, wow, this is really interesting. But like the masculine piece, think of that as like solar energy. It's the sun. It's the light. It's awareness.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what it is. It's like it goes out into the world. We see masculine energy very physically.
Right.
And like the sun shines light, if you imagine the sun shining light on a tree in kind of like midday, the shadow of that tree would also be very easy to see. Like the shadow of a tree and light is really easy to see. And it's kind of like our masculine shadow as well, is like once you can see it, it's super clear. Like the masculine shadow is easier to see. Whereas if we flip over to the feminine, which would be lunar light, which is kind of that receiving and reflecting energy, because the moon doesn't actually have its own light, it reflects that of the sun. And when that casts its light, it's at night. And if you like try and go to see the shadows at night, you can't really see them with your eyes. You have to feel them. You have to kind of, go out at night and you have to kind of feel what's going on. Your visual
Yeah.
perception isn't
Yeah.
as
Because you don't
sharp.
have
And that's what,
sight.
yeah, you don't have sight. So
Yeah.
like the feminine is like depth. It is like our emotional world, our inner world, that which we cannot really see with our actions, but like you can feel when someone's a bit off.
Mm.
Like you couldn't necessarily describe they did this specific behavior, but like I'm intuitively sensing that something isn't right or something's off. Like that's our feminine intuition picking up on that. And
Mm.
like as I go down my journey, these kind of like energies within me just like begin to deepen. And I'm by no means a master of both, but I'm always interested in the pursuit of how these energies manifest, and my relationship with them as like I heal and grow seems to keep shifting, and my appreciation for both deepens and deepens and deepens. And
Mm.
it's kind of like a mystery as well. Like we can describe these things, but you can't really get to know them until you experience them. So I guess for anyone listening, like I would just, yeah, I would like invite you as maybe these things have already been coming up for you in your journey, or like they're new areas of pursuit, but just like know that it's a beautiful part of the process. And like that's kind of like the mystery of our healing journey as we, begin to grow and evolve. And yeah, like that, I guess that's all I got on it. I'd love to hear your feedback. It is kind of a mystery, so there's no like definitive thing that we can specifically get to. But
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree so much with everything you said. And in fact, even add, and I kind of had this thought the other day about the sun and how life can't live on the sun. Like it's so hot. It's just pure fire, right? And but yet it's alive. If you think about nuclear fusion, it's constant new life that the sun is, and it's penetrating, it's providing this energy for life, for the feminine earth to receive, for life to grow upon her. And so the cycle is there. And so it's such a nuance. So that's kind of the first thing. But what was very fascinating, actually, I had a sit today, a meditative sit. People have heard this, but there's a tobacco called rapé or hape. If you're from Brazil, and I'll sit with hape every once in a while. And today it was just felt very heavy. Like I just felt a lot of heaviness, just a lot of sadness moving through me. And that was yesterday, and then into today. And so I sat, and it was like this depth of reverence that I needed to, like, I just felt like I needed to physically bow to this essence of Pachamama being the earth. And I just sort of felt like once you tune into these feminine structures, this is what I wanted to add to the element here, is there's such a depth of reverence that it's almost like a humility that you go through the depths, like you were describing, like in your descent, as your masculine structures are moving and they're trying to, like, capture lands and money and resource and hierarchy and these things. And then we like have this moment of breaking, and there's a great unraveling, and we have to go into the depths. You become so humbled by it, and you go back to the divine mother being the essence, whether you want to call it Pachamama or just even the divine feminine. And there has to be this depth of reverence for you to even receive her, because she's not, she's like, like, but
like a good woman, like any good woman.
Yeah, absolutely. And so once you go to her and you simply just, it's almost like an offering, like I offer myself to you. And now she says, okay, now she can open, and you can experience her fully through your own structures. And again, this is an intuitive thing. This is a visceral thing. So anytime I sit with any medicine, any meditation, I am very moving, like I'm mobile, like it moves through me very quickly. Like I could feel a lot of things. And when it goes through you and you allow the sensations, you surrender to the sensations, they can be incredibly euphoric, orgasmic even. Like, and I've had those meditations where you're like, like you're seeing the stars in a meditation, and it's potent. It's potent.
Yeah. That sounds beautiful, brother. Thank you for the addition.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It was good. So what I want to kind of take us then is like, so we've regulated our nervous system. We've kind of tuned in to kind of the direction we want to go. We kind of know now when we surrender to sensation, that's like, the good place. I think one of the main missing components to overall well-being in the plant medicine space and breath work, and even in coaching, I've seen is integration. And that for me was the thing that really turned, and in fact turned my own experience. So I sat with some plant medicines over the summer and then went through breath work. And then I was like, I don't want to do that again because it was powerful. And I was like, I don't want to experience that again. I was like, I'm going to integrate. So I did the work to integrate, to fully embody. And then that led me into actually learning how to facilitate breath work, and then led me into now what I'm doing even today, which is like, starting things like a podcast and expressing myself as my fullness. And so my question for you is, what are some of the practices you like to prescribe for your own integration, or maybe that you teach others how to integrate?
Beautiful question. And amazing that you've been on that journey, and you've obviously clearly integrated, because I'm imagining that guidance came from the work that you've been doing to start the podcast, to express yourself, to show up and support other men, and everything that you're doing right now, I'm going to imagine is actually your integration in manifestation, which for other men, I like, that's it. Like, that's it right there. You're living it and walking it.
100%. My quick side note before I get into integration, my ayahuasca experience, I was like almost yelling the entire night. And one of the shamans came up like kind of midway. It's like, go within. And I was like, no, like the whole lesson for me was freedom of expression, be yourself. Like, don't fucking stop. Let's go, like let it out. And I was learning how to express myself, and I was like screaming and yelling, let's all have fun, everyone's like in their own journey. And I was like that guy that was like annoying everybody. But it was perfect, man.
We've all been that guy.
I know. It was perfect.
And if you haven't, it's coming.
Yeah, exactly. It was great. So sorry, let's go back to integration.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I think that links in. I don't think we're not speaking about integration. I think that was what I'm going to sense or guess is that was your healing of like, actually, I need to express myself and live with joy, as you mentioned, is one of your primary emotions.
Yeah.
And now you're doing that.
True. Like on the nose.
Yeah. So it's like we're living it. And I think that's the key for like, for in my experience, like I've had, whether it be therapy sessions, breathwork sessions, coaching sessions, like I take it very seriously. Like the messages that I get or the lessons that I get, I take them seriously. And I actually do something about it. Like it's told me in the past, whether it be therapy, coaching, or plant medicine, whatever the thing, I think they can all lead us to the same place. Or a great breathwork session would be another place. And you get wisdom, you get messages from your body, from source, from spirit, from God, from whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I made so many mistakes of not listening to the lessons and then having to repeat them, that eventually I was just like, fuck it. Like, what happens if I actually just listen to the lesson and follow it? Like, even if I'm like, oh my God, that shit's scary. Like, I've got to quit my business, or this relationship isn't actually serving me and I've got to leave it. And I know that that's going to cause all sorts of issues. And I went through that. Like, I got wisdom that I actually need to leave a relationship about a year ago now, literally probably a year to this day, actually a year to this day.
Yeah.
I got wisdom on that, and it was super clear to me. It was like, when you're in your heart and super aligned and connected to spirit, like you get messages right there.
Yeah.
And the message was I needed to leave. And I was like, this is going to hurt. This is going to be bad. Like there might even be public backlash, which there was. And like, I was like, I just have to go through it. Like I have to live my truth. And I've just got to follow that guidance, because I know in my heart that every time I have done that, I have been rewarded tenfold. And every time it has been challenging. And that's the point. Yeah. If it was easy, we'd all be living super aligned, connected lives. It's like, like this counterforce is an essential part of the growing and healing process. Like that's a part of the maturation, being able to deal with people not liking you, being able to deal with, not everyone understanding you. Like that's like a part of it. Like, and we have to accept and love ourselves and walk that path. Like that's just the best we can do. And it's imperfect, like it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Like, it's not meant to be perfect. We're meant to be messy human beings, and just accepting that and living with love and compassion for ourselves and others, and trying not to be as messy as we can be, and try and clean things up best we can, and apologize and make amends and repair where possible. And like, I guess we're speaking about integration here, but like what I'm trying to say is like listening to the message and actually doing something about it. I think that's just integration, and then getting the support you need to actually step into embody that. But no one's going to be able to get you to do it apart from yourself. Like you have to be committed. You have to be willing to do the other 50%. Like one of my teachers says, like 50% of the work is done here in ceremony, and the other 50% is at home. And if you don't go home and do the work, you're going to come back here again. You're going to be puking and shitting your guts out. And you're going to say, you know, Tighter, I'm having these issues again. And he's going to say, okay, I love you. But like, you know, like that's the same stuff you were doing 6 months ago. Like, and it's like, are we going to get the message and listen or not? You know?
Yeah.
And I think I'm just in a space now where I'm like, I'm by no means perfect, but like when I get a message and I know that that's the message, I'm pretty much just confident that I just need to make those moves and just act upon it, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that is it ultimately. And I have like a little, you know, moniker and formula that I walk people through to basically get to exactly what you just described, which is go fucking do it. Like you just went through the ringer, whether it's breath work or somatic release or even a you know, deep hop A session is, you know, can hurt. It's physically painful. And then you get to that point of like, okay, now what? This is, I released this, I saw this, I gathered this information, this wisdom. I need to go do, you know, like go do it. Like now what are you, like, what are you afraid of? And that's where the, you know, the sacred warrior comes online, where it's, are you willing to step through that ring of fear? And on the other side, what's, you know, what's on the other side? It's like, you didn't realize that that's a portal, and that's a portal to the greatest life you can ever imagine, because you now become giving of the exact thing that you always wanted, whether it's love or expression. Because I always wanted freedom of I always wanted to express myself, and I just for whatever reason couldn't. Like, like I can't. Like I wouldn't speak up in my relationships. I wouldn't speak up in, you know, in just all these areas of my life. And now it's like, now I can go out, and that's freedom for me. And that for me is abundance, because now I'm like, I can have anything I want. I just got to go ask. I just, you know, I reached out to you. I was like, hey man, you want to be on my show? You're like, sure, let's do it. You know, like I would have totally stopped myself, looked at somebody online and been like, oh, he has more followers than me, and like shut down. And now it's like, no. This is expression. This is what freedom looks like. And I love that. I love that. So
yeah, it's beautiful, bro.
We've gone through.
Thank you for stepping in. I was just going to say thank you for stepping in. It's beautiful to see you in such a fullness of expression, because my assumption about you, having only met you, you know, recently and seen you followed each other online and obviously met and chatted today, it would be easy to come to the assumption that you'd never been through that. So like lots of people will meet us when we've been through all of these things and we integrate, and they assume that's who we are, but actually like there's a whole journey that went through in order to arrive here, and that is integration.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had started my professional work like 10 years ago, and I always knew I needed to like do YouTube and podcasts and these, like, I just knew, but I couldn't step into that. And it took me years. I mean, literally it's just like, I just started this podcast about 3 months. No, not even 3 months ago, like 2 months ago, you know, it's like, it's just every day. It's like a new evolution of self, and it's so potent. So let's kind of summarize. We brought somebody through nervous system regulation as step number one. Then you can kind of step into the depths of sensation and feeling. Who are you? What is going on? Right? Like in that, you kind of identify things that are important, things that bring you joy, things that, you know, create enthusiasm for you, you know, and then you can kind of expand those guide rails by expressing and allowing the feminine within. And then finally we integrate and we go out there and do it. I feel like we're good. Like, I mean,
we're good.
That's it. All right, everybody. That was good, man. That's a full arc. I think that's beautiful, because I think a lot of people overthink it sometimes, and I think it's a lot simpler than sometimes we make it out to be. Because I've seen in the healing world, you know, a lot of people go out there, I'm still healing, and I always ask, well, what are you healing from, or what are you healing towards? And for me, after I went through my experience in June, I just I felt healed. I was just like, I'm healed now. And not to say that the work is done. There's definitely more work. It's sort of like lifting weights. You can just lift as much weight as you want. You'll just keep getting bigger. But how big do you really want to get? That's the question, you know? Like
there's a point where you're just fit. I think there's that initial phase, like where you go from unfit, if you've had like a fitness and health journey, which I know a lot of people probably have who are listening.
Yeah.
You go through that initial phase where you go from unfit, where you're eating like microwave meals, you know, you were checking into McDonald's or Wendy's or whatever you guys got in the States.
Yeah.
And then there's a point where you just stop doing that and you start eating healthy and you start working out a few times. And there's a point where you reach maybe 6 months in where you're just generally healthy. And there's always new levels of health you can get to.
Yeah.
But there's a point where you just reach general health. And then all you got to do is maintain that, and you kind of grow that a little bit, and you go on an immersion, you know, retreat or something once a while.
Yeah.
And that kind of tops you up, and you keep your spark alive for health and vitality.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's no more complicated. It's no more special. There's nothing special about the healing or transformational space. It's just like any other industry, but it just has a different set of results. And I think the results are super beautiful for those who are embarking on that journey.
Yeah, I love that. Man, that's a beautiful place to kind of hit period. Let's go there. So where can people find you? How can they work with you?
Yeah, the best place to find me will be on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is I am Rick William, just in case I forget. And my website is www.rickwilliam.com. There are some free resources on that. There's like a purpose workbook, which is really thorough if you're looking to kind of dive deeper into some of these concepts we've been speaking about. It also comes with a free nervous system regulation exercise, so you can kind of go through those different levels. It's based on Deb Dana and Stephen Porges' work with polyvagal theory. Kind of go up into sympathetic, back into connection, down into shutdown, back into connection. It kind of takes you through that process.
I like that.
And if you're looking for coaching or support, I'm also available on my website too.
I love that. Who are you said the authors of the polyvagal technique? Who is that again?
So Deb Dana and Stephen Porges.
Okay. I'm going to check that out because I'm always looking for new stuff.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Amazing.
They're pioneers. Absolutely
Amazing. So, well, brother, man, it was such an honor. I am so grateful that you came on. You gave an hour of your time to all of us. And I just wish you the best. And man, we'll do another one.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Appreciate you, and appreciate everyone listening as well. You know, if you made it this far, you're clearly walking the path. And I just want to acknowledge, you know, everyone who is stepping into a greater version of themselves. I think it's beautiful work. So thank you.
I love it. All right, guys. Love you all. We'll see you at the next show. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. If you found this episode valuable, then go ahead and leave a 5-star review explaining how this podcast has helped you so more people can find it. If you want to be a part of the Brotherhood, then click the link in the description below. You can also check out the Unbreakable Man experience if you're ready to face a deeper challenge and change your life for the better in just 3 days. All right, guys. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate you. And as always, stay unbreakable.